So, what is it, or what is stress, and how is it that it affects us? Well, stress basically is this thing, right, inside of us. It's a chemical reaction, if you will, or we should say, not even a chemical reaction. It's the body deploying certain chemicals into the body to help deal with what we perceive as being something that's not working, right? Not working the way that we want it to. Because if you remember correctly, your body is made I should say, your mind is set up to make sure that you survive, right? And so when things aren't going the way that you want them to, what does your body do? Well, it starts to dump chemicals into your system to try and get you into a place where you could survive. Unfortunately, most of these chemicals are harmful, more harmful than good. Then the question becomes, okay, well, what do we do about it, right? So last week, I had a really stressful week, and here's why. I'm working on a couple different projects right now, one of which, well, two of which have a partner involved, and the third of which is solo, is me. And on the two projects that I have partners with, I had issues with the partners, like literally not answering the phone, returning phone calls, but not being prompt about it, not being clear about directions, so on and so forth, which really put me in a bind. It put me in a position where I didn't want to be in, which I had a customer and a client who were requesting things and I couldn't get it done right. Why? Because I didn't know exactly what it was or how it was that my partner wanted to proceed with it, right? So ultimately, it put me in a place of what? Of confusion, of anger, of frustration, and finally in this place of overwhelm. Now, how many times have you felt like you've been in this position of overwhelm? Like I got to this point on Thursday when I was like, screw it, like I'm done. I left the office early. I went home. Like I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So what do we do when these situations come up? When there's a client or a customer or a contractor or an employee or somebody in our lives, and it could be personal, right? It could be at the gym, it could be your wife, it could be your kids. What do we do when we get in this situation that we feel complete overwhelm, that we feel like we've lost control of our life? What do we do in that situation? Well, I want to share some stuff with you that, of course, I didn't do it right away, so I'll be the first to openly admit it. But I went back and I started looking at, okay, yeah, I have a checklist, if you will. And I started looking at my checklist to say, am I doing these things that are on my checklist, yes or no? And the truth is I wasn't doing all of them, which is why I was in this place of feeling stressed, of feeling overwhelmed. According to the Center for Disease Control, there's up to 40% of Americans are not just stressed at work, but extremely stressed. Think about that for a minute. That's overwhelm level. That's where I was last week. How many times do you find yourself in that position? Here's the crazy part. I told you I was sick, right? Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do know that my mind's health affects my body's health. So why am I sick? Well, you could say because I caught some bug, or you could say that you brought it on yourself. Now, I think that my physical or my mental state definitely contributed to my physical state. Absolutely. I was worn out. I was exhausted last week. And I found it really hard to do simple things. Like I took my daughter out on a date on Saturday night. We went to Panera Bread. She wanted to go out. Went out to Panera Bread. She got a mac and cheese and a caprese sandwich. And, we just kind of hung out for a few minutes, and it was more than a few minutes, about an hour. And we talked, and it was a really great time. But I got back and I was just exhausted, just worn out, right? So this stress and this overwhelm affects every aspect of your life. Now, what I want to share with you are some strategies, again, this checklist, if you will, that I use to help me get in this position of not feeling so stressed and not feeling so overwhelmed, okay? The first thing that I always try to do, and I call this starting your day with a win. If you've been around for any period of time, I'm always repping the phrase, win the daily war, win the daily war, win the daily war. Why am I saying that? Well, because the most important piece of real estate that you will ever own are the 6 inches in between those ears of yours. That's where the daily war begins. The daily war to overcome doubt, to overcome stress, to overcome overwhelm, to overcome doubt, and everything in your life that will ultimately keep you from getting what it is that you want. So let me ask you this. How many times have you felt, You get up in the morning, you're late, you don't have time to shower, you're trying to feed the kids, the dog took a dump on the living room, you're trying to get the kids off to school, and then once you get them to school, like you're trying to dodge traffic, and then there's an accident on the freeway, and then you're trying to throw down your coffee or your energy drink, and then you finally get to work. The problem is you're a few minutes late, so you didn't get to your business meeting in time, and then you have a client waiting, and blah 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 blah, and it just snowballs, right? When you start off your day like that, it's not that you are proactive or proactively dealing with stress. It's that you're reactively dealing with stress. In other words, stress is coming at you and you're just trying to dive and shield yourself and do whatever you can to get away from it, right? So what I've noticed, not only in my life, but in the men that I've coached and some men that I've studied that are very successful businessmen, and we're talking, multiple millions of dollars, sometimes B's in the billions. What these men have is something called a morning routine. Now, I have a specific methodology that I subscribe to. If you'd like to learn more, I'd love to share that with you. But basically, what you need to do in the morning is you need to start off with exercise, good nutrition, proper planning, and a positive attitude. That's it. If you could do that every morning, now you are being proactive for the stress that's going to come your way. You're not late for work. You're prepared for work. You know what's going to happen. You know who you have to talk to. You know what you have to say to them, so on and so forth. You're going to find that the stress that you feel on a daily basis starts to die down. The second thing, be clear on requirements. How many times have you told somebody to do something only to come back and realize they didn't do it the way that you wanted them to? Or you're in the position where you were told to do something and you don't really understand what you're supposed to do. Therefore, your boss gets pissed off at you because you didn't do it the way that he wanted it done. Like, it's this constant back and forth. So you can fall in the trap of, well, I'm just going to roll the dice and think that this is the way that it should be done. Or I'm just going to roll the dice and think that this employee knows what I'm talking about. Or you could take the time to go over the expectations, the strategies, and a clear execution plan with your employees or with your supervisors. A few minutes, and taking time to get clear on this will relieve a ton of stress for the both of you. The next one, you need to develop some type of conflict resolution technique. Yelling and screaming, punching a hole in the wall, throwing the dog across the room, these things do not work. Trust me, I've experienced all of them. Yes, I have punched a hole in the wall in my house before. Way back when things weren't working the way they're supposed to. Story for another day. But here's the deal. If you have a method to deal with conflict resolution, it doesn't mean that the conflict won't happen. But what it means is that when it does happen, you'll be in a position to deal with it more effectively, right? Because that's ultimately what we want, right? We want to be able to deal with conflict. So here's a super simple method for conflict resolution. Now, mind you, this is the end all be all, but it's an example for you. You have to get really good at communicating. Communicating this. What is it that you want? What is it that I want? And ultimately, how can we now bridge the gap and get what we want? It works with your boss. It works with your subordinates. It works with your employees, your contractors. It works with your wife. It works with your kids. This works, but you have to deploy it. You have to actually do it. The next thing, your organizational skills. If you're a type A personality, like people like to call it, that's what I am. You have an issue with organization. You have no issues talking to people. You have no issues getting stuff done. You just have an issue with organization. Most high achievers are naturally disorganized. So what happens? They start their day already behind. Why? Because they haven't planned. What I've realized is planning ahead helps reduce the stress at work. It helps reduce the stress in your relationship. So being organized helps you rush less, because you're not trying to be early, right? Because you have more stuff that you need to figure out, and you need to plan, and you need this, and you need that. What I've learned is if you take 10 to 20 minutes every morning to plan out your day, you will save yourself 1 to 2 hours of work, period. 10 to 20 minutes of planning, 1 to 2 hours of work. The next one, multitasking. Forget about it. I think I've talked about this before. Multitasking does not exist. No one can multitask, not even a damn computer. That's right, the computers, the one that work really, really fast and make you a lot of money, hopefully, they cannot multitask. They just are really good at doing one task fast followed by another task, fast, followed by another task, fast. It's the same thing with you. You cannot multitask. When's the last time you tried to hold a conversation in your ear and calculate your accounts receivable or try and write a bid or so on and so forth, and both suffer, right? Your speed, your accuracy, and ultimately your sanity. They all suffer because of it, right? Rather than multitasking, what you need to learn to use are strategies when it comes to time management. There's a couple, and I'll talk about them later, but there's one called chunking and then one called time blocking, right? Chunking is you just break off the huge task into big chunks, and you just do that one chunk at a time, one chunk at a time, one chunk at a time. Time blocking, you turn off your phone, any distractions, so on and so forth, 1 to 2 hours, and you literally work on a project and nothing else for those 1 to 2 hours. Just a couple techniques that you can use to help you in your life. And then finally, perfection. We're always striving for perfection. Think about this. Everybody's talking about the hustle and the grind and the this and the that and the so on and so forth. And we're chasing this thing called perfection. The problem is that perfection does not exist. It never has and it never will. I don't know where you subscribe on the religion scale, but if you believe in God, well, there was one perfect person that walked this earth, and that was Jesus. The rest of us, it's not going to happen. So you have to quit thinking about yourself as being a perfectionist. What you have to think about yourself is being a progressive person. In other words, you are making progress every day a little better. And you have to be willing to look back and go, hey, I'm not where I want to be. However, I'm much farther along than I was 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, so on and so forth. Give yourself a pat on the back, a fist bump, a congratulatory high five. Take the time to actually look back and see the progress that you made. You'll see that you'll become less stressed about what's going on. So again, to recap, stress, it's going to happen in the workplace. It's going to happen in your home. It's going to happen in life. What can you do about it? 1, get yourself a daily win. Start off with a win. In other words, implement a morning routine. 2nd, become clear on the requirements, whether it's you and a boss, whether it's you and a subordinate, it's you and a contractor, it's you and your wife. Be clear on the requirements. 3, develop a conflict or an effective conflict resolution technique. And I shared one with you. What do you want? What do I want? And ultimately, what do we want? 4, work on your organizational skills. I suck at this, or I can't say I suck at it anymore. I used to suck at it, but now I've got my journal book, and it really helps me every morning. It takes 10 minutes. I fill it out, and I know exactly what I'm doing during the day, and I know exactly how it is that I'm doing it, which is super important. Number 5, forget multitasking. Multitasking does not work. You cannot multitask. Your effectiveness, your efficiency, your speed, your accuracy, and your sanity will all suffer because you try to do that. And then finally, perfection is a lie. It's about progress, not perfection. Now listen, you have a lot of stresses when it comes to being a businessman. It's part of being a businessman, right? So what can you do about it? Again, I invite you to go to winthedailywar.com. It is not perfect yet. I will openly admit that. But hopefully this week we'll have everything up and running and ready to go. There'll be some tools there for you, some different things. And as always, I want you to reach out to me. If you have any questions, concerns, so on and so forth, something that's specific that I can help you out with, ask. I'm more than willing. And it doesn't cost you anything. Crazy, right? Now, remember this. If you want your life to get better, you have to invest in yourself. That's not always a monetary investment, but you must be willing to invest in yourself. All right, that's all I got for you. Remember, you want to win in life? Well, it's easier to stay ready than it is to get ready. As always, stay safe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.